now we'll start the forum for the candidates for United States House of Representatives in District 9, Georgia. We have on my geographical left Roger Fitzpatrick, followed by Bernie Fontaine, and Mike Scupin, and Paul Broun, and they will be speaking in that order. So, first, each candidate, just to recap what the rules are, each candidate gets a 2-minute introduction, and then some questions from the audience will be asked of each candidate. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to respond, and then, although, again, this is not a formal debate, if a candidate mentions one of the other candidates present, then that candidate, in a substantial way, then that candidate will get 1 minute to reply, and then at the end, if time allows, each candidate will get another 2 minutes to conclude. And so we will start at this end with Roger Fitzpatrick.
I feel like I'm in a spotlight here. My goodness. My name is Roger Fitzpatrick. I am born and raised in White County, about 10, depending on where you live, 10, 15 miles east of here. I went to White County High School and throughout my entire education there. Graduated, joined the Marines, and spent a little bit of time in that, and then came back, got my schooling at the University of Georgia and North Georgia College, and again at the University of Georgia, got my education degree and began teaching at White County, and then finished up my career as elementary school principal at an elementary school in White County. And when the year that I retired, 2012, I decided that I would run for this particular seat. It was an open seat in 2012. And the final 3 candidates were Paul Collins, Martha Zoller, and myself. And obviously I did not work. Came in third though, so I thought I did real well. And then 4 years passed, and I looked at what was going on in Washington, D.C. I looked at what was going on in the representation that we had, and I had to confess, we were not getting representation. The 9th District of the state of Georgia is easily the most conservative district east of the Mississippi. And if you have an honest evaluation of what you have been getting from the man that was elected by the people 4 years ago and 2 years ago and is up for re-election this year, you would have to say he is not representing me. He is making votes that are antithetical to the conservative constitutional values that we hold dear. And it is time to find somebody else that will represent us the way that we deserve. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bernie Fontaine next.
My name is Bernie Fontaine. I'm from Sutchess, Georgia, and my wife is down there with me. We have been married 50 years, have 4 children, 12 grandchildren. My background is obviously been in the military for 30 years. I started at the bottom, worked my way up, and my strong point is I like to get the job done. That's what I do. That's what I do best. After 30 years in the military, I started teaching political science. My educational background is I've got a bachelor's degree in business, a master's in public administration, and I'm a doctoral candidate in political science. I did teach political science for 15 years. What I have also done is worked at each level of government, from federal to state to local. I like to say the worst job I ever had to you people that are aspiring to be commissioners is as a county manager. Worst job I ever had. I hope that we have commissioners that can get along, get the job done. That works a lot better, trust me. Thank you.
My name is Mike Scupin, and I feel like this is my old stomping grounds. I had a land survey business in Dahlonega for a number of years. My great-grandfather landed in North Carolina, heard gold had been discovered in Dahlonega, and came up and became a gold miner. He was part owner of the Betts mine, Josephine mine, but it never did leave me any gold. My educational background, I have an associate's degree in architecture. I have a BBA in economics from North Georgia College. I have a Master of Science in Technology Management from Southern Polytechnic and State University. I was an adjunct professor for a while at North Georgia College. I've been in small business all my life. I've been a builder, a developer, owned a gift store at one time, and as I said, had a land survey business for the longest part of my career, both in Gainesville and in Dahlonega. Born in Gainesville. I'm running because I am just sick at the way our country is going. And as I watch the sitting congressmen that we have now contributing to the direction that this nation is going, I knew I had to do something. I stepped up at one point in 2010 and started the Tea Party in Hall County. It's called the Near Tea Party Patriots. I've been active in trying to stop bad legislation down at our state capitol, as well as trying to pass good legislation. I was involved in getting the healthcare compact agreement passed in Georgia. We were the first state in the nation to pass that agreement, which will put the quietus on Obamacare for all states that sign on to it once we get enough states involved in this thing. And it was moving really well until the healthcare industry found out about it, and they did not want it because they wanted Obamacare, and they really began to fight back. And so it's been really difficult now to get it passed in some of the other states. I can't say enough about the direction that the current congressman has been going, and I just really wish that you would really dig into his record. Thank you.
Thank you. And Congressman Brown?
My name is Paul Broun. I'm a medical doctor, family practitioner, and I'm one who believes in freedom and liberty. And in fact, in 2007, I was elected to Congress, and when I went there, my purpose was the same as I have today. And that's to restore power back to the states or to the people as the 10th Amendment demands. You see, the establishment in Washington, D.C. want the power. They want the money. They want to be able to buy your vote. They want to be reelected. I started my political activism fighting for gun owners' rights and hunting rights. We must not lose our Second Amendment rights. That's the amendment that protects your God-given right to own and carry and utilize a gun as long as you don't hurt somebody else or somebody else's property unless it's threatening you. We're losing our freedom and liberty. Doug Collins has been part of that establishment that's taking away your freedom and your liberty. The best example I can give you of how out of touch he's with the people here in the 9th Congressional District in Georgia is his vote for the omnibus bill last December, which funds Planned Parenthood. It funds Obamacare. It funds the Syrian refugee program. It funds the President's amnesty programs. It funds Common Core. It creates another $500 billion worth of debt. I've never voted for an omnibus bill, and I pledge to you I never will. I've never voted for a tax increase. I've never voted to raise the debt ceiling. We've got to get this country back on the course that our founding fathers gave us. And that is an idea of limited government, of government constrained by the enumerated powers in the U.S. Constitution. That's how I voted when I was there. That's how I vote when you elect me as your U.S. Congressman. Thank you.
And now we have some questions that were provided in advance by the audience, so we'll go through the roster of candidates again in the same order. The first question is, why has the Republican congressional delegation been so ineffective in addressing the U.S. national debt? So, first, Roger Fitzpatrick.
Primarily because they don't have a backbone. and the agenda is, I need to get reelected. And anytime that you have that as the first and foremost purpose for why you're doing anything, you will never do what is right. Even if it was, it's going to be tough. Because what we're doing, we're facing the $19+ trillion debt. It's continually growing at about $500 billion a year. And it's unsustainable. But we will not touch, they will not touch, let me put it like that, they will not touch the monkey and the elephant in the room because they're too concerned with what people are going to think about them. You remember some commercials 4 years ago when Paul Ryan was vice presidential candidate, pushing Granny off the cliff. Now that never would have happened, but if the Republican Party had had the intestinal fortitude to be able to do what was right, Granny would always have her Social Security. But as we're going right now, who knows what the future is going to hold? Because the Social Security system is bankrupt. And we have got to make changes, which means that we're going to have to make tough decisions on all the things that are going on there. We have got to balance the budget, and not only balance the budget, we've got to develop surplus so that we can start paying our debt down. Imagine, right now we're paying historical low interest rates on our debt. What's going to happen when they go up to historical rates? The interest will balloon out of control, and we've got to make changes now.
Okay, you'll find that quite often we agree, and everything that Roger said I agree with. Now, what do we do about it is the next step, okay? Yes, there's no leadership, there's no backbone, that's absolutely true. And, not just Marines have backbone, Roger, I gotta tell you that right now, okay? I've got two of them up here to contend with. Seriously though, what we need, we have a rotten, corrupt system. It's called the establishment, and it needs to go. Now, my contention is that if we the people, get rid of most everybody in Congress, and the few that might make it back would get religion, we would have a lot of new people, a lot of people with a different attitude. At that point, we need leadership to get an organization going that'll work and get rid of this archaic system. You've heard people talk about committees, and committees can be good or bad, but right now, every committee that we know about is just another excuse for doing nothing. And you work your way up through longevity, not through ability. So we do have some serious problems. How am I doing on time?
1 minute and 15.
1 minute.
You got 45 seconds.
I got 45 seconds. Wow. You know, in the military, we get to say things very quickly and succinctly, and we're not really good at political rhetoric, which when I was teaching politics, I'm going to tell you, political rhetoric is the art of taking a little bit of truth and weaving it around to where you can talk all day long about nothing. Thank you.
That's Scupin.
The problem boils down to really what Roger said. The Republican Party nor the Democratic Party really wants to change the direction that our nation is going. We see that continually in their votes. They give us an omnibus bill that's totally unconstitutional, and they all vote for it. They give us Every Student Succeeds Act, which again is an unconstitutional bill simply because it funds the Department of Education, which is an unconstitutional department. And they all vote for it and they pass it. It takes a lot of courage to stand up and look at the American people in the eye and say, we have got to start cutting some things that you don't want us to cut. And that courage does not exist in Washington right now. I think that courage is sitting on this stage. I think any of these four guys have that kind of courage, and I think that any one of us would be willing to stand up and say we can no longer vote for an omnibus bill. We've got to change what we're doing. We've got to eliminate rules that are in the House that make something mandatory. That's part of a dog and pony show that's going on up there. When they claim that everything is mandatory, well, you cannot obligate a new Congress. So every 2 years, we have a new Congress. So anything that's mandatory right now can be unmandatory next time. So when you hear Congress tell you that we can't change this because it's mandatory spending, no, that's part of the dog and pony show, because they can change it for each Congress as they start up in a new year. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'd like you to read the question again for the simple reason I want the audience to be reminded about what this question was all about.
Okay.
Because I have some two specific things that I want to bring out, but they need to be reminded, if you would. Please
Okay,
read it.
the question is, why has the Republican congressional delegation been so ineffective in addressing the U.S. national debt?
The reason they've been so ineffective is because they want the power. They want the money. And they will vote for more and more government so that they have more money to control, so that they can come and buy your votes. I mentioned that a little earlier. The other reason that they are totally unwilling to deal with a federal debt is because they have no principle that they'll stand firm on except for one. And that one principle is their reelection bid. The reelection is more important than taking care of the job that they're supposed to be doing. Under the Constitution, national defense and national security should be the major function of the federal government. Former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mike Mullen, said that the greatest security threat we face as a nation is the debt. But it's a whole lot bigger than that. Very few people talk about the unfunded liabilities. Some economists think it's over $200 trillion. We're headed to a total financial collapse of this nation if we don't stop spending money that they don't have in Washington. Because see, the federal government doesn't make a penny. They just take money from you and me. They spend your money to try to get reelected. It's got to stop, folks. The establishment in both parties are just as guilty of building this government that is just totally out of control. And Doug Collins is right in the middle of that. Doug Collins has voted for more debt, more spending. He's voted to give the president a blank check in what's called the debt ceiling. When you give him a blank check, there's no debt ceiling. It's time limited. That's exactly what John Boehner has done. It's the reason I did not vote for John Boehner. But Doug Collins pandered to John Boehner, voted for him twice, and that has to stop. That's the reason you need to vote for Paul Broun, because I'll go fight for you, not the establishment in Washington.
Okay, and the second question is, what is the single most important issue for the 9th District? And if elected, what will you do about it? First, Roger Fitzpatrick.
Single most important issue facing the 9th District is the sustainability of the United States of America. I was asked earlier, what are the top 3 issues that are facing this nation? And they are the debt, and the debt. It's kind of like that question that somebody asked of a picture. What's the most important thing for a picture? Location, location, location. Yeah, and I really want to stress that point, because if we continue on the road that we're going, then it is totally unsustainable. Let me read just a few numbers to you, and maybe this will bring it home. Last fiscal year, 2015, 52% of all of the spending that went on in the federal government was consumed by Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and Obamacare. 52% of all spending. Mandatory spending and interest on the debt by 2020, that's 4 years from now, will consume 75% of the budget. The debt service, the amount of interest that we spend on just paying on the debt, just the interest, This year, $225 billion. 5 years from now, $551 billion. 9 years from now, $772 billion. That's just interest. That is money down the drain. And then here's the scariest one. By 2033, 17 years from now, entitlements and service on the debt will consume all of our revenues. And if we do not get our fiscal house in order yesterday, what country are we going to have left? Because what we are going to do is we are going to spend our way into oblivion, and we will cease to be the greatest nation on the face of the earth, and we will become a byword among the nations if we don't do something now.
The single biggest problem is the debt, but it's tied in with the economy, and the third part is, of course, the national defense, which is the main reason to have a federal government in the very first place. Okay. We need to work on the three of them together to get our government back functioning again. If we don't have a government, and that's the direction we are heading in, we have anarchy. Trust me, that's the way it works. Now, can you imagine not having a government? Now, what happens is that country boy can get by, but the people who will be hurting the worst are those that are on, quote, entitlements, that have become used to those problems. And we will make it one way or the other. Right, old Ranger? Okay. We need to work on getting the economy rolling again, because if we take a person off entitlements and unemployment and put him to work, it's going from costing us money to making money. He'll be paying taxes. Do you see that that is a double whammy? So we need to work on that. It just makes me very, very sad to go through the 9th District and find in all 19 counties we have empty factories. And we can do much better than that. We don't need to be farming everything out just so somebody else can make some money. We need to do those things that you've heard about already. Get rid of the corporate income tax and make it worthwhile for corporations to do their business here, just the way Sam Walton used to do it, right? Thank you.
I have a hard time imagining that anybody would think that the debt is not the biggest problem, not only for the 9th District, but for the entire nation. It's a national security issue. It affects every citizen in this nation, every citizen in the 9th District. But what's causing the debt? Where does it come from? Does anybody think that it was a wise decision to set up a privately owned banking system and for us to pay them to print money out of the air, just to make it up? That's what we're doing. That is what we have to pay interest on every dollar that they manufacture just out of thin air. Wouldn't you love to have that job? So if we're going to handle the debt, we've got to handle the Federal Reserve. We've got to eliminate the Federal Reserve. The Constitution sets up for us, our government, to be in charge of our money supply. That's all that's needed. We closed the Federal Reserve down. We began to handle our own money. JFK attempted to do that back in the 60s. That's what has to be done if we're ever going to get out of this situation. We can come up and print our own fiat money and not have to pay interest on it. We can put that into the system. We can use that to pay off the debt. But as long as the Federal Reserve continues to function, we're going to continue to pay interest on every dollar bill that is out in circulation. Look what's in your pocket. It does not say anything but Federal Reserve note, and we all know that when there's a note there, we're paying interest on it. We've got to eliminate the Federal Reserve to ever handle our debt.
agree that the debt is the biggest national security issue facing our nation. But let me go further than that. The thing is, what is a huge problem that faces people here in the 9th Congressional District is an economy that's in the dumpster. Does anybody think that we have a good, strong economy now? I agree with Mike about the Federal Reserve. In fact, I introduced a bill to get rid of the Federal Reserve. I introduced a bill called the Jobs Act that would bring millions of new manufacturing jobs back here to America. I started the process that brought Caterpillar to Georgia, as well as Baxter Pharmaceuticals. We have to have jobs here in the 9th Congressional District, and I've been working to do that. I've got positive solutions to the problems we face. Obamacare is a huge attack upon every citizen in this district and in this nation. As a medical doctor, I know how disastrous it is. In fact, the Democrats designed Obamacare to fail so that they could go to a single-payer healthcare system. The Democrats said Medicare for all. But friends, it's not going to be Medicare for all. It's going to be VA care for all. And it's got to stop. My Patient Option Act, which was endorsed by the conservative alternative to the AMA, is the only Republican bill that will put your healthcare decisions in your hands. It doesn't have a federal bureaucrat between you and your doctor. I think one of the biggest issues that face the people of this district is a congressman that's just totally out of touch with the people of this district, the values of this district, because he represents the establishment in Washington, D.C. He represents the special interest in Washington, D.C., and I fought them. I'm the non-establishment candidate that's in this race that has that proven constitutional conservative voting record. That's the reason, please vote for Paul Broun to be your U.S. Congressman.
And now we return to the very exciting topic of fiscal responsibility. So the question is, fair tax, flat tax, or another plan? First, Roger Fitzpatrick.
Obviously, the fair tax. It has been accused of being regressive. I find it to be the most fair plan out there. Obviously, the current way that we do things, the harder you work, the more you have to pay into the tax. However, with the fair tax, you get a rebate based on where you are in relation to the poverty level. And then, but this is the important thing, you get to keep 100% of your paycheck. So when you go and you put forth your labors, the fruit you receive is all. And then you decide where you want to spend your taxes, by what you purchase. If you want to buy a new house, yeah, you pay taxes. You go buy a used house, you don't pay taxes. You buy a new car, you pay taxes. You buy a used car, you don't pay taxes anymore. Under the fair tax plan. And the thing of it also is, the corporate tax rate in the United States of America right now is at 39%. 39%. Do you think corporations are paying that tax out of their own pocket? No. Guess who's paying for it? You and I are. So imagine if we were to go to a fair tax, then the corporate tax rate would go to zero. Prices on goods and services would drop by 39%. All these corporations would come back into the United States. Jobs would explode. People would be able to go back to work. And then they would be getting that 100% of that paycheck again. And oh my goodness, what would happen to the revenues that would be going into the coffers of the federal government? It would explode as well. We would be able to pay down our debt. We would be able to pay it down so that we would not be the slave to the lender, and we would be able to, as a nation, live our lives in liberty. But it would take the steel backbone, unwavering backbone, to do what is right, because you've got to have somebody that's not in the pocket of the crony capitalists that are embedded into the income tax system that we have right now. We have got to have somebody that is going to do the right thing in order to get this nation out of the quagmire that it's in.
start by saying that I believe that everybody here would like to see the IRS disappear. The IRS, that department that has more law enforcement than the FBI, there's a reason for that, and it needs to go, and of course the fair tax is good. My point here is that, yeah, that makes sense, not a problem. What Roger says is true, and you know, it will lend itself to people looking after their own money much better than the government looks after their money. That's the short end of it, okay? You'll do much better, obviously, not a problem there. Where the problem comes in is changing from what we have now, all 74,000 pages of it, to what we ought to have. You know, there's a great deal of difference between what is and what ought to be. And to get there, it will require some very careful planning and incremental steps to go. And I would think it would take 5 years. The best we've had has been going on since 1914. So if it took that long to make a mess, we should have a bit of time to straighten it out. I don't want to see people hurt by a change. Oh, we'll get rid of this, we'll get rid of that. Well, that's easy to say, a fiat, you know, it makes good political sense, but when it comes to getting it done, that's something else again. We can do it, but we better plan and use our heads in what we're doing. Thank you.
Mike Scupin.
Well, I certainly lean toward the fair tax and definitely want to get rid of the Internal Revenue Service. I don't know how many in here are in small business themselves, but something that I discovered when I was in small business is you have a real good year and you think you're doing really good because you're making more money this year than you did the last year, and things were really looking rosy, and then you get hit with your income tax. And what has happened is you went over the bracket just by a little bit, not enough to make a big difference, but you went past one of those brackets, and your income tax bill then takes nearly everything that you earned extra and gives it to the federal government. I've been there, I've had that happen. We've watched the Internal Revenue Service go after conservative groups. That organization needs to go. They have too much power. It's simply a method of controlling the people. It's one of the principles laid out by Marx in communism, a progressive income tax. We've got to get away from that. One of the things that to me is really tied to all this that was introduced at one point is called the penny plan. And we were talking about the debt. The penny plan, when it was introduced over, I believe it was a 5-year period, would balance our budget. But Congress wouldn't go for that. Why? Because it was making them take some real cuts. Where were the people in this nation when a plan like that emerged? Why didn't we rise up and really pressure our congressmen to do something with that? Why didn't we do that? This is one of the things that, since I've been involved in the Tea Party, that I continue to watch and I continue to be amazed that it's like we want to send people up there and then just turn them loose, hoping that they're going to do the right thing, and then we don't really have to watch them. Folks, we should know by now that's not working. We have to watch them like we watch a 2-year-old to keep that 2-year-old out of trouble. That's what's required. So we've got to learn as a people to step up to the plate, do our sovereign duty, to know what these people are doing. And when they're acting like Doug Collins and acting like a 2-year-old that won't stand up and do what's right, we need to bring them home.
Yep. Paul Broun?
I'm glad to hear y'all are promoting my legislation. Connie Mack and I wrote the penny plan and introduced it in Congress. And in fact, I have been an ardent supporter of the fair tax and retail sales tax. But you see, it doesn't matter how the federal government gets its taxes. Though I am a very strong supporter of getting rid of the IRS, getting rid of all the hidden taxes, go to a retail sales tax. But we've got to balance the budget. I introduced the strongest balanced budget amendment to the Constitution that was in Congress. And the only way we're going to get that passed is if we the people stand up and say to the politicians in Washington, we're not going to put up with this any longer. We've got to stop the out-of-control spending. Because if we don't stop the out-of-control spending, the fair tax could be 80%, or flat tax could be 90%, or whatever it is to try to get money out of you to continue the addiction to spending money that politicians in the establishment have, including Doug Collins, and including our supposedly conservative Republicans. You see, I've been fighting that fight. I've got the positive solutions. I've never voted to raise taxes. Doug Collins has. I never voted to raise the debt ceiling. Doug Collins has. I've never voted for an omnibus bill because they are unconstitutional. Doug Collins has. It's time for we the people to stand up to Doug Collins and other politicians like him and say, we've had it. You see, I'm fed up with Doug Collins. I'm fed up with establishment. I'm fed up with what's going on in Washington, D.C. And I'm eager to go fight for you, we the people, to put this country back on the course that our founding fathers gave us in the Constitution as it was intended. That's exactly how I voted before. That's how I vote again. That's why you should vote for Paul Broun to be your U.S. Congressman, to represent you and to save America and stop the out-of-control government and out-of-control spending.
Oh, well, then I'm going to exercise moderator's prerogative and pick the most exciting question, in my opinion. What, if any, is the country's obligation to resettle Syrian refugees? First, Roger Fitzpatrick.
0. The number one responsibility of the federal government is national security. That's it. That's the number one responsibility. And so to bring somebody into this nation that cannot be vetted, that cannot be guaranteed that they will not have ill will against the people, the citizens, the legal citizens of the United States of America, we have got to do everything within our power to stop that. Because no one should be allowed into this country that is not willing to come in and conform themselves to the culture of the United States of America. We don't need anybody coming in here that's wanting to bring their own culture with them and then create pockets of wherever they're living of their own culture. That is against the American way. The American way says, you come to our country, give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, those of you who are yearning to be free, but conform to the culture of the United States of America. That upon which it was founded, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we'll open our arms to you. Come on in here. But if we can't 100% guarantee you don't come into our country. Now, last century, on at least 2 separate occasions, we had administrations that shut the border to particular ethnic groups. And I didn't hear, of course I wasn't alive for one of them, but there was not a single outcry. FDR did it once, Jimmy Carter did it once. And it is perfectly okay to shut the borders to particular ethnic groups. You know, not all of the Muslims are terrorists, but 100% of the terrorists are Muslims. Shut the door. I don't care where you're coming from. Shut the door to those who are of the Muslim ethnicity until we can come up with a way of vetting and making sure that you and I are safe.
Roger, that is not politically correct. No. But it makes sense. It's interesting that these so-called refugees, you know, I've seen refugees in Europe. I'm old enough to have seen refugees in Europe. And, you know, there's a lot of women and children. These refugees all seem to be about military-age men, for starters. They need to be taken back to where they can fight for their country. I think it was that said earlier, let them fight for their country first and then we'll talk about helping them out. Well, all they want to do is come over here and then, as was well presented here, want to make us adjust to their way of living. Well, that isn't going to happen. And we need to push back. You know, let's quit trying to be politically correct. I can tell you, it works because I, for 15 years, taught political science, and I can tell you the students I had could tell you every time that I was the most politically incorrect political science teacher they had, but they learn more that way. They learn what needs to happen, what is. Now, I keep watching the lady over here because I want to make sure I don't run over, but that's not my problem. Usually I end up with a short answer, and we need to just stop it. We need to get those borders closed, and that is all part of this, you know. It really, really burns me up, and I can tell you this, that they want to provide money to resettle these people, and I know I'm not supposed to say these people, but that's, you know, these people coming in, and we have veterans on the street that we're not taking care of. That burns me up. Thank you.
Mike Scupin.
I like Roger's answer, 0. We don't need to open our doors and our borders to these people. In 2013, I was at a conference in Washington, and at that conference, we ended up listening to nearly 12 hours of briefings on the Islam religion. 12 hours. During that time, I learned a tremendous amount about that religion. First off, it's more of a political system than it really is a religion. I like to say that it's a political system that masquerades as a religion. When you begin to find out what the mullahs teach in their universities over there, they teach something called abrogation. Abrogation is how they control what governs in the Quran. Abrogation says that any verse that comes later, if it's in conflict with verses earlier, then it has precedence because it was last. This goes back to what happened with Muhammad in Mecca and Medina. In Mecca, he wrote all the peaceful verses, and he was trying to build, I think, a real religion. It didn't work too well for him. He got run out of Mecca. He ended up in Medina, and he decided there he was going to change the way he went about it. That's when he began to write the verses about cutting off heads of Christians and killing Jews and all these other things. So they had to have a way to decide which way is going to be enforceable in their religion. They chose abrogation as that method. There's another concept called taqiyya, T-A-Q-I-Y-Y-A, I believe is how you spell it, something like that. That is simply, it gives them the authority to lie to us as long as it promotes the Islam religion. Folks, we cannot get these people from Syria, so therefore they have no right to come into this nation.
We have no obligation to the Syrian refugees. They need to stay in Syria. In fact, I've been fighting that issue myself already as national spokesman for an organization called the Tea Party Leadership Fund. It's more than just the Syrian refugees, though. But Doug Collins voted to continue the Syrian refugees. There was no fight whatsoever by our own Republicans, our own Republican establishment, to stop the Syrian refugee program and all the bad policies that Barack Obama's put in place with his pen and his phone. There's not a whimper of a fight. That's the reason that when Doug Collins and the Republicans that supported the omnibus bill, when it passed, Nancy Pelosi said of Doug Collins and all those Republicans, they really gave away the store. But they're giving our store away. They're giving your money away. They're giving our grandchildren and great-grandchildren's money away, and they're robbing those kids of their future. We've got to secure the borders. We can't wait for a wall. We've got to secure the borders today because that's a national security issue. If we stop allowing Muslims to come in this country legally, they'll come in this country as they already are illegally across our porous borders. We've had 4 presidents, George Herbert Walker Bush, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama, who have refused to comply with the laws that were passed in 1986 that says secure the border and that you cannot rent to, harbor, or hire an illegal alien. This has to change. It is a national security issue. And it's absolutely critical for us to stop that. But the only way we're going to stop it is stop politicians like Doug Collins who are going to continue to vote for whatever the establishment wants. I will not do that. I have not done that, and I won't do that as your congressman. Please vote Paul Broun to be your U.S. Congressman.
Okay, I am informed that our 2-minute closing statements from each candidate have been taxed at the rate of 50%, and so they're only going to be 1-minute closing statements. So, first, Roger Patrick to give his 1-minute closing statement.
Nothing like a name change. I love this country. I could easily be camping with my wife right now. But yet I have chosen, my wife has chosen, my parents have chosen, one of my sisters, she went off somewhere. We have chosen to be engaged in this process because our country is worth saving. It's worth saving for you and for me and all of us that are in this room. It's worth saving for our children and our grandchildren. And that's what the founders did this. They didn't do it just for themselves. They did it for the posterity of this nation, for all of those that would come afterwards. Now, right now, we've got it pretty good. But if we continue in the same vein, we will not be able to give to those who come after us the same opportunities that we have today. And it is time to elect somebody to go to Washington that will fight for your values. And I am that person, and I ask that you would vote if you're starting Monday and all the way through to May 24th. I ask for your vote, I ask for your prayers, and I ask for your support. Thank you very much.
Okay, Bertie Fontaine.
We've heard what the problems are. We know what we need to do. And right now, we've got 5 people to pick from. One's not here, obviously. And you have only one right answer to make. Okay. So let's break it down a little bit. We have 2 politicians and 3 citizen candidates. So if you like what you've had over the last few years, you can go that route, or you can go with one of the civilian candidates. I suggest that you go with one of the civilian candidates, citizen candidates. I've been in the military too long. Then look at the qualifications. What do we need? We need to get the job done. And as I said earlier, the system is non-existent. We have this establishment, and people have been there, are part of the establishment. I call it Potomac fever. You go to Washington, you stay there. I've been to Washington, but I'm immune to that fever. We need somebody with some leadership to come up with a new system. We have an opportunity to get, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. We're going to have enough of a big flow of people out, new people in, to make the changes that we haven't had over the last 100 years. It's been slowly deteriorating to what we have left. What's that mean? I don't have more time.
You're out of time.
I'm out of time. Cut it off. Okay. Just remember, don't complain. Vote for Fontaine.
Mike Scupin.
We know, I think most of us in this room, what the issues are. We know what the problems are. If you've been following your congressman up there in Washington right now, you know that he is compounding the problems. He voted for refugee resettlement. He voted to fund Obamacare in the omnibus bill. He voted to fund Planned Parenthood in the omnibus bill. You can go on down the list as far as you want to go, and he's voting against the values of the 9th District. I would like to draw your attention to Brian Pritchard back there and his fetchyournews.com. We have had what I call almost a real debate with Congressman Collins sitting there, and that took place Friday a week ago. And I would ask you to go to fetchyournews.com, find that debate, watch that debate where the sitting congressman is in there, and watch how pitifully he tries to defend his record by throwing off on other people. He can't defend his record, so all he can do right now is like he did when he ran against Martha Zoller, and that is attack. Trying to hide his record from the people. Thank you.
And Paul Brown.
Folks, the choice is clear. You want to continue with the establishment congressman who votes for more spending, more government, more taxes. That's what Doug Collins does. Or do you want somebody who has a proven conservative constitutional voting record? 4 questions I utilize in evaluating all legislation, and I pledge to you I'll use these 4 questions. The first, is it right? We only have one standard of what's right and wrong, and that's what our Creator gives us. So is it biblically correct? Secondly, is it constitutional according to the original intent? Is it one of the 18 enumerated powers in Article 1, Section 8? Third, do we need it? And fourth, can we afford it? That's how I voted before. That's the reason that I was rated to be always in the top members on the conservative side of Congress. I have been rated as the most conservative member of the entire U.S. House of Representatives. Folks, you need to vote for somebody who has a proven record. Somebody who's been in the trenches, fighting the establishment, fighting the so-called leadership. I did not vote for John Boehner to be Speaker in 2013. We needed somebody that would get in Barack Obama's face and say, Mr. President, we ain't going to do that. We're going to stand up for the people and put this country back on the right course. I voted for Alan West to be the Speaker of the House. You need to vote for somebody that you can trust to be the congressman that we need in the 9th District, in Georgia, in this country, to stop this out-of-control government, and that's Paul Broun. Just vote alphabetically and you'll be okay.
Okay, well, thanks to all 4 candidates, and we're just going to pause for a couple minutes while